Ms. Harwood, we need to discuss complaints filed against your nursing license. Multiple patients have reported substandard care at facilities where you're listed as the attending nurse. The investigator from the State Board of Nursing said it like I should have expected the call, like I had spent the last 3 years working at the same hospital on the same floor with the same impeccable record. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and felt my entire world tilt sideways. Because I hadn't worked at any home health facilities. I hadn't treated any of the patients they were describing. And I certainly hadn't committed the negligence they were now pinning to my name. But someone had. Someone using my license, my credentials, my identity. And when the investigation revealed who it was, I learned that family betrayal can come from places you never thought to protect yourself against. Before I tell you who stole my identity and why, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? And when you hear what my own in-laws did to me, tell me honestly, have you ever trusted someone who was plotting against you the entire time? My name is Paige. I'm 32 years old, and I've been a registered nurse for 9 years. I worked hard for that license. 4 years of nursing school while waitressing nights. Clinical rotations that left me crying in hospital parking lots from exhaustion. A board exam I studied 6 months for while battling anxiety so severe I couldn't eat. That RN after my name wasn't just letters. It was proof that I'd survived things that tried to break me. And my sister-in-law had stolen it like it meant nothing. Let me take you back to the beginning. I married Daniel Harwood 6 years ago. He was kind, steady, and came from what I thought was a close-knit family in suburban Indianapolis. His parents, Frank and Donna, welcomed me warmly. His younger sister, Kristen, seemed friendly enough, though we never became close. She was 30, unmarried, and had bounced between jobs for years. She'd never found her path, Donna would say sadly. She just needed more time. What I didn't know then was that, finding her path, apparently meant stealing mine. The first sign of trouble came 18 months before that phone call from the board. Daniel and I had gone to his parents' house for Thanksgiving, and I'd noticed Kristen asking unusually specific questions about my job. So your license number, is that like a social security number? Do you memorize it? How do hospitals verify you're actually a nurse? Do they call someone? Home health agencies, do they do background checks or do they just check your license? I thought she was considering a career change, maybe thinking about nursing school. I answered her questions patiently, even proudly. I loved my job. I loved talking about it. I had no idea I was handing her a blueprint for identity theft. A few months later, Kristen announced she'd gotten a job in home health care. The family was thrilled. Finally, she was getting her life together. She talked about her patients, her schedule, how rewarding the work was. She even asked me for advice occasionally, clinical questions that I assumed were general curiosity. She was asking because she had no idea what she was doing. She was treating real patients with real conditions, and she needed someone to tell her how to fake competence. The call from the state board came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was between shifts, making dinner, planning a quiet evening with Daniel. The investigator, a woman named Sandra Collins, was professional but serious. We've received 4 complaints in the past 3 months regarding care provided under your license number. The complaints describe medication errors, missed vital signs, and in one case, failure to recognize signs of a stroke. That patient is currently in a rehabilitation facility with permanent damage. I couldn't breathe. I don't work in home health. I've been at Memorial Hospital for the past 5 years. Full-time, on record. You can verify my schedule. There was a pause. Ms. Harwood, the facilities in question have time cards with your signature. They have copies of your license. They have documentation showing you provided care to these patients. That's impossible. I've never worked at those facilities. I've never seen those patients. My mind was racing. Someone is using my license. Someone is pretending to be me. Sandra's tone shifted slightly. That's a serious accusation. Identity theft of a medical license is a felony. If you're claiming fraud, we'll need to investigate thoroughly. Please investigate. Please. I've worked too hard for my license to lose it because someone, I stopped. A horrible thought was forming in my mind. The questions at Thanksgiving. The sudden career in home health. The clinical questions she'd been asking for a year. Kristen. I think I know who might be doing this, I said slowly. But I need to be sure before I say anything. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The board pulled records from all 4 facilities where I had worked. They requested photos from personnel files. They examined signatures. They interviewed supervisors who had hired Paige Harwood and asked them to describe her. Blonde. About 5'6". Mid-30s. Friendly but vague about her experience. I'm brunette. 5'2". I have 9 years of detailed experience I can discuss for hours. My sister-in-law had been working as a nurse under my name for 14 months. She had treated over 40 patients. She had administered medications she wasn't qualified to give. She had made clinical decisions that required years of training she didn't have. And one of those decisions, a failure to recognize stroke symptoms, had left an elderly woman permanently disabled. When I told Daniel, he didn't believe me at first. Kristen wouldn't do that. She's not smart enough to pull off something like that. She did do it. The board has photos. They have documentation. They have proof. I showed him the investigator's preliminary report. Your sister has been impersonating me for over a year. She's hurt people, Daniel. One woman had a stroke because Kristen didn't recognize the signs. Daniel's face went pale. Oh God. Oh God. He sat down heavily. My parents. They must have known. They helped her get these jobs, they must have. What do you mean they helped her? Mom was always asking you about your license renewal, remember? How the process worked, what documents you needed. I thought she was just making conversation. He looked sick. She was gathering information. They all were. I thought about every family dinner, every casual question, every time Donna had complimented my career and asked innocent questions about the details. They hadn't been interested in me. They'd been running reconnaissance. Why? I whispered. Why would they do this? Because Kristen needed money and couldn't get a real job. Because home health nurses make good money and nobody checks credentials carefully. Because they thought they could get away with it. Daniel's voice broke. Because they didn't care who got hurt as long as Kristen was taken care of. The confrontation happened at the Harwood family home 3 days later. I didn't want to go, but Daniel insisted. He said his family needed to face what they'd done. He said he needed to hear them explain it. What we got instead was denial, deflection, and blame. You're overreacting, Donna said when we showed them the board's findings. Kristen was just trying to help people. She has a caring heart. She has no medical training, I said flatly. She gave insulin to a diabetic patient without checking blood sugar first. That patient went into hypoglycemic shock. Accidents happen. Even real nurses make mistakes. Real nurses are trained to prevent those accidents. Your daughter was practicing medicine without a license. That's a felony. Frank finally spoke up. What do you want us to do, Paige? Turn our own daughter in? She's family. She stole my identity. She's endangered my career. My license is under investigation because of what she did. I was shaking with anger. I could lose everything I've worked for because your daughter wanted to play nurse without doing any of the work. Kristen hadn't spoken yet. She sat in the corner, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than remorseful. It's not that big a deal, she finally said. I was good at the job. The patients liked me. A woman had a stroke because you didn't recognize the symptoms. That wasn't my fault. She was old. Old people have strokes. Istertahia. She genuinely didn't understand. She didn't comprehend that she'd hurt people, that she'd committed crimes, that what she'd done was serious. In her mind, she'd just been doing a job. Just making money. Just being a Harwood, taking whatever she wanted because she believed she deserved it. I'm pressing charges, I said quietly. The room exploded. Donna was screaming about family loyalty. Frank was threatening to cut Daniel out of the will. Kristen was crying, finally showing emotion now that consequences were real. But I was done. I'd heard enough. I walked out of that house and never went back. The legal process took 8 months. Kristen was charged with identity theft, fraud, practicing medicine without a license, and criminal negligence resulting in bodily harm. The stroke victim's family filed a civil suit as well. 4 different home health agencies had to notify patients that their care had been provided by an unqualified imposter. The Board of Nursing investigation cleared me completely. My license was restored to good standing with a note in my file explaining the fraud. Several facilities reached out to apologize for not catching the discrepancy sooner. One administrator told me their background check process had been overhauled because of what happened. We never compared photos, she admitted. We just verified the license number was valid. We never thought someone would steal another person's credentials. Kristen's trial was brief. She took a plea deal rather than face a jury. The evidence was overwhelming, and her lawyer advised her that sympathy would be hard to find for someone who harmed vulnerable patients. She was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. She'll be out in 2 with good behavior, but she'll have a felony record forever. She'll never be able to work in healthcare, in education, in any field that requires trust. Her shortcut to a nursing career ended up destroying any career she might have had. Frank and Donna testified on her behalf at sentencing. They talked about what a good person she was, how she just wanted to help people, how the punishment was too harsh. They never once acknowledged the patients she'd hurt. They never once apologized to me. Daniel cut off contact with his parents that day. He said he couldn't forgive them for what they'd helped Kristen do, or for how they'd tried to blame me for the consequences. The family he'd grown up in, the people he'd trusted his entire life, had shown him exactly who they really were. I keep thinking about all those family dinners, he told me after the trial. All those times they asked you questions about your job. They were planning this the whole time. They looked you in the eye and smiled while they were stealing your identity. I know. How do you trust anyone after something like this? I thought about it for a long moment. You trust the people who prove themselves. The ones who stand by you when everything falls apart. The ones who choose you over blood when blood turns out to be poison. Daniel had chosen me. When his family demanded he take their side, he'd refused. When they'd threatened to disown him, he'd said that was their choice to make. When they'd called him a traitor for supporting his wife, he'd hung up the phone and never looked back. That's how I knew I'd married the right person. The stroke victim's family won their civil suit. The award was substantial, enough to cover her long-term care needs. Kristen will be paying a portion of that judgment for the rest of her life. Every paycheck she earns, for decades, will have a garnishment attached. The woman she hurt will never fully recover, but at least she'll be cared for. I still work at Memorial Hospital. Same floor, same colleagues, same patients who trust me with their lives. My license hangs on my wall at home now, framed, a reminder of what I almost lost and what I fought to keep. Sometimes I think about Kristen in her prison cell, finally facing consequences for the first time in her life. Her parents can't bail her out of this one. Their enablement couldn't protect her from the law. All those years of finding her path led her straight to a cell and a felony record. I don't feel sorry for her. I feel sorry for the patients she hurt, the families who trusted me to care for their loved ones, the woman who had a stroke because a fraud didn't know what she was looking at. If you're watching this and you work in any licensed profession, I want you to hear this. Guard your credentials like they're made of gold. Because to some people, they are. Your license number, your certification documents, your professional identity, these things have value to people who are willing to steal them. Don't assume family would never betray you. Don't assume casual questions are innocent. Don't assume that people who smile at you over dinner aren't calculating how to take what you've built. I trusted my in-laws. I answered their questions. I never imagined they were planning to steal my identity and let an unqualified person treat vulnerable patients under my name. That trust almost cost me everything. Protect yourself. Verify everything. And remember that some people will always see your success as something to be taken, not earned. Don't let them. If this story spoke to you, drop a comment below. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.